Hello and good morning to those of you here on the West Coast. Good afternoon on the East Coast. And for those somewhere in the middle, thanks for taking your lunchtime to join us here today. Welcome to Cox Business Cloud Streams Live. This is an exclusive live forum web series where we take a deep dive into cloud and other emerging technologies designed to simplify your operations, drive increased productivity, and maximize profitability in your business. My name's Jared Ruth. I'm the Director of Marketing at Cox Business, and I'm really excited today to be joined by Michael Leonard, who's a Director of Product over there at VMware. You out there, Michael?
Yeah, I'm here, Jared. It's good to be here with you.
Yeah, so big news over at VMware and Vello Cloud. So for those of you who don't know, VMware acquired Vello Cloud, when was it? A few years ago, 2017, Michael?
2017, that's right.
Yeah. And just two great brands, and I know that they've recently rolled Vello Cloud into the VMware brand strategy and brand name. But you know, I just got to say, it's got to be great working for a company like VMware.
Well, you know, it's good you brought this up because it's the same market-leading Vello Cloud product, but we have the strength of VMware behind us, which means more resources to improve the product and help customers.
I love it. Yeah, I agree. I mean, we sell a lot of the Horizon DAS product as well on the VMware side. It's a big product for us and our customers. So it's nice to have sort of those two great solutions packaged together. So anyway, so today we're talking about Sd-Wan, right? And really the title is Sd-Wan is your network working for you. And I think it's a perfect title because I think about, having been in network engineering for a long time, as you continue to build your networks out, they have a tendency, like most things, to get more and more complicated. And Sd-Wan is such an incredibly powerful technology, just from a perspective of allowing you to simplify your network, securing your data, your assets and your data from a cybersecurity perspective. And also just one of the things I think that isn't talked about enough is just how you can maximize your application performance. I think we talk a lot about SD-WAN being a great tool for connectivity, ease of connectivity and whatnot, but the application performance is becoming more and more critical. So what I'd love to talk about, and I'm glad to have you here today, Michael, is just how do we do a better job of using SD-WAN to improve our own network? How do we truly make our networks work better for us, right? And so before I jump into that, though, I did just want to remind everybody, as with every live stream event we do, this is being recorded. It'll be shared following today's session. Also, if you have any questions, there's a panel in the right side of the screen there. We're actually using Teams here instead of WebEx like we did last time. Go ahead and chat them into the Q&A panel, and we're going to go ahead and get those answered for you at the end of the day. So we're gonna jump into this. All right. So kind of what I was talking about. When you think about a traditional network deployment, and this started 20, 30 years ago in many cases, we started building branch offices out to connect to each other. We started building, once we started moving our servers out of the branch or out of our offices or headquarters into data centers, we kind of used a lot of different technologies to do that. So I'm going to say TDM, DSL, cable, MPLS, kind of Metro Ethernet, if you for that layer 2 circuit, and then internet layer 3 VPNs. It's funny, Michael, I even run across some entities that are actually still using ISDN lines, believe it or not. So I mean, the technology is some of this legacy technology is out there still. Again, not very often, but do you ever run across any ISDN lines out there?
I can remember when I moved from dial-up to ISDN, I thought it was great, but but you're right, there's still a mix out there. Unfortunately, we've got a solution for that. So
yeah. So I think over time, though, as we connected these legacy circuits together in our branch offices and some virtual circuits, et cetera, and then over time we started adding in cloud services. And it wasn't like, all at once you said, hey, I'm going to migrate my network over to the cloud. It was usually like, hey, I'm going to start using this SaaS application. I remember using Salesforce when it came out in the early 2000s. I think we started using it around 2002, 2003 at the company I was working for. And at the time, we it wasn't even really classified as SaaS. It was like, oh, this is a cool application that lives somewhere out in the internet, right? But over time, again, we started using these applications. We started, migrating certain parts of our network to, to other infrastructure, AWS or Google Cloud or some other, entity. And I think over time, again, you just start getting this this very complex network, which becomes extremely costly, inefficient, performance issues, and just really complicated to manage. And, when we're putting this together, I was like, in some ways, it almost seems like a bowl of spaghetti, right? This is probably an exaggeration in some ways of a network, but I have seen some networks that literally look, you've got your lease lines, you've got your access lines, you've got virtual, connections, all kind of coming together. And then when you think about, you growing as a business and then maybe acquiring another business or multiple other businesses, such as, what happened recently here with VMware and Vello Cloud, it just continues to add to that complexity, right? So,
well, yeah, I agree. I've sometimes called the people who run these networks the masters of complexity, but we'd like to make it easier for them so they can go on to do bigger and better things, right?
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, when you think about scaling a network like this, when you think about securing a network, let's face it, with some of the denial of service attacks and ransomware attacks and other things, it leaves a lot of holes in the network. And then, one of the things I just wanted to talk about today, because it's just such a fascinating topic over the last year, right? Is then we had COVID happen, and all of a sudden, these really complex networks that are all sitting in the office somewhere, now we've got people working, from their houses, and not to say they weren't before, but I know I like for us at Cox Business and at Cox, we went to like 95% of our workforce working remote within the matter of a couple weeks. So you can imagine just the complexities that this adds to.
Well, the same happened with us at VMware. We shut down the offices, and we found many of our customers have done the same thing. They now have a relaxed policy on work from home, but they've been looking for a solution to help them deal with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we get it. We understand it. This is a problem. And, I'm excited again to have you here just to talk about Sd-Wan. How do we simplify these connections? How do we secure the networks? And then ultimately, how do we get better application performance in these environments? So I'm going to pass it over to you, Michael. You take the reins, and we'll let you run it from here.
Well, thanks, Jared. Yeah, I think you've really summarized the situation. The big thing is that the application flows are changing. There we go. And like you said, the applications are moving to the cloud. Organizations are using software as a service, and it has gone on for a while. I can remember using Salesforce back when and seeing the growth, of using software as a service. And at VMware, what we saw is with all of these changes, a new model's needed for the network, something that will enable this transition that's happening. And Sd-Wan has really emerged as that solution, and we'll get into that in a little more detail. But what we really found is that there are various Sd-Wan solutions out there now, but you need to find the right one, and it needs to provide easy access to the cloud and, like you were saying, high performance for the applications. And it really needs to work with the existing network. You don't want to just tear out what you've already got. And it needs to be extensible, meaning that you can adapt it to your existing network, but scale it as you need to, and then deploy it. We found that organizations with these big complex networks don't do everything at once, but they want to put SD-WAN in there, get it going for their critical sites, and then expand it. And an important thing is you need to be able to manage multiple transports. The old model of going to the data center, then out to the internet doesn't work. You need local breakout, get straight to the cloud. And you want to do this with policies that direct traffic based on the user's intent and the application. So it's all got to be set up, according to business policies. And we really want to avoid having to, telnet into each router and type a lot of commands to get this to work. I mean, possibly you could do it that way, but wouldn't be easy, right? And what we really get down to is just making the whole user experience easy, and better. So,
right.
So VMware really addressed this with this cloud delivered model. It's a virtual overlay on the physical network. It can be deployed without any changes required. I can remember we use this term in the router world, set and forget. Just, have the underlay network link everything together, put in the basic configuration, but then use the intelligence in the overlay in the SD-WAN to manage things from the central orchestrator. So as you can see here, there are three components to the VMware SD-WAN solution. The first is the edge device, and this is just a basic connectivity device. It's out in the remote location or in the branch location. It does have some basic routing capability, so it has the potential to replace the router if if organizations are looking at that. And then it communicates with the gateway, which these are traffic steering devices that VeloCloud hosts. VMware hosts. I think Cox, you guys also host these gateways, right?
Yep.
So they're put out there in the network and they intelligently direct traffic. Does it need to go to the data center, to the SaaS application? And they're sitting in the points of presence that are closest to the application. So they're giving you that optimal routing and that intelligent, traffic steering. And then you've got the VeloCloud orchestrator. That's the part that puts it all together. So everything's managed from a central portal. It's done using business policies, got a graphical interface, and it has roles-based access, right? So I think you'll talk a little later, Jared, about how customers can have views into this whole network.
That's right. Yeah, and I just also call attention. I mean, I think when you talk about the edge, you call it a basic device. But I think that's just because you're used to it. I think when coming from a network perspective, these edge devices are so powerful, and we're going to talk about multipath optimization here in a minute. But literally, I love the fact that you can throw almost any connection at this device, and it can identify what's the best path and really make it simple for the user. One of the things, and you can do this with routing too, right? I mean, this is something that you can configure on a router, but I think that simplicity is really the key here, and being able to get some real clear understanding of how your network's working and how to optimize those paths out. Regardless.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. You're right about it, and I called it a basic device because it's easy to deploy, right? But it's got a lot of intelligence in it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's incredibly simple. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's right. It's all done automated. It calls home to the orchestrator. It downloads its configuration, and you're right. You can connect different any connection type to it, whatever's available, and I'll get into that a little bit more. And then it, intelligently communicates with the orchestrator. And as I mentioned, those are in strategic locations close to the cloud applications, and they ensure that your route doesn't just randomly go over the internet. In the case of Cox, it's going to go over Cox's preferred network, right?
Yeah.
And
yes.
And then you'd mentioned briefly, so the multipath optimization. Now this is, the cloud delivered model is unique to VMware. So is the dynamic multipath optimization, and this is the secret sauce. That's doing some of the things that you'd mentioned. So the ability to bond multiple links, to have them act as one logical link. So if you have a branch location, maybe it just has a legacy private network link, like you mentioned. They can add a broadband link, and then you can set up a traffic policy and say, okay, if I'm going to Salesforce, go out over the broadband. If I'm going to the legacy in-house application, go over the private network. And Sd-Wan at one point, they would talk about replacing MPLS, but I'd like to make clear that we work with MPLS. The customers don't have to tear that out if they choose to. If they choose to put broadband connections to their data center, then they could, change what network links they have. They could take out the MPLS, but SD-WAN works great over the legacy network and the new broadband network. So you can just add to what you have. And then what happens here is that the dynamic multipath optimization is monitoring these links in an active model. So you're using your full bandwidth all the time. It's not like a router where they were typically active passive. The other thing is that it's monitoring packet by packet. So the traffic steering is instantaneous. It's not like a link has to go down, then the router has to figure out its routes again. This just keeps working, in the background.
Great. And I think too, and I think we're flipping around a little bit here, but I'm going to go back here real quick, Michael, because I want to talk about, the importance. I mean, here we have a sample of like voice traffic, right? Traffic type is voice, and you see before we're having packet loss and some jitter and latency, and then ultimately the box is able to marry up those links and create a great experience for voice. But let's talk for a minute just about the application delivery in general, right? So when you think about application management and making sure that maybe you're prioritizing certain applications over the other ones, how does this play into that? And how do you guys manage that? And how easy is it? I should say better. How easy is it for an IT administrator or somebody to manage that?
Oh, thanks for bringing that up, because it's really a central part of this whole solution. We monitor traffic, we gather statistics, and we find out how customers typically use applications. And then we put in templates that have predefined policies. So this comes pre-configured with more than 3,000 application policies. So it'll work right out of the box. Now, of course, you can go in there and customize things. You can add application policies, for in-house applications, or you can just tune things like the bandwidth reservation or the preferred link. So yeah, I think that's a real important thing, that it really understands the applications.
So wait, you're telling me that if I want to watch Netflix, all day long and not do my work, you can prevent me from doing that? From getting priority traffic?
We can throttle back your Netflix. Your IT admin can. They'll get a view through the orchestrator of what's going on, right? They'll see what links are being used, what application traffic. They could flag you,
Yeah. Okay.
if they needed to.
Well, if my boss is on, I promise I'm not watching Netflix all day long. Yeah. But I mean, that's great, and I think that's something that's really that's really unique, and it's very simple. Again, all stuff that could be done with multiple boxes before, but it's pretty incredible here. And the other thing I think is just how it does it all real time. You mentioned, I just want to note it again, that it doesn't require a loss of signal to use this. This is something that you can do active, and it'll create, sort of take all things into consideration and use the best path. So
yeah, that's
vary.
right. Yeah. I just wanted to jump in on the work from home thing too, because that we found that there's a need for that. You have a lot of home users now. Maybe the family does want to use Netflix, but then the person who's working from home is using a business application. We can make sure that business application gets priority and segment it and keep the data, the home data and the work data separated, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's unbelievable, and we're seeing more and more of that, as people think about, going back to work or what their new work environment looks like. So good stuff. All right, let's move forward.
Well, yeah, so then we kind of touched on these, but we want to take a look at, how are organizations going to use this? Why would you jump to SD-WAN? And so, modernizing your branch. You can reduce the number of devices. This has a built-in firewall, so you could remove that potentially. If you're looking at an expensive router refresh, you could just avoid that and save the cost. And this is something where I wanted to ask you, like, what are you seeing as far as your customers changing the way their branch network works?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think that obviously there's a lot of SD-WAN solutions out there. There's a lot of providers that are putting SD-WAN in the network. So obviously it's a very popular discussion topic. In fact, most customers we meet with, are interested in both SD-WAN and then ultimately what'll become SASE, which we'll save that for another day. But I think that part of it is just that. It's like, okay, we've got this really complex network. We're trying to think about how we work smarter, right? How do we do this better? And so this hits like so many different points, from connectivity. You mentioned right there, which I love, and you're absolutely right, security, right? There are some built-in firewall functions in here that, depending on what your current firewall does, you can solve some of those issues as well. Not to mention just simplifying the network as a whole is going to help. But, the other thing I think is it's really important using a provider that knows, that first of all owns the network. So, right, you've got the connectivity piece, you've got the ability to deploy, and we'll talk about this in a second, deploy this solution, but then also understands the application layers, right? So when you kind of pull all this together, you're not just buying a piece of hardware, you're actually buying a solution or getting a solution that can meet your needs end to end. So I think that's where we're seeing a lot of that here.
Well, yeah, I think you're right about that. Some customers do buy this themselves and it works for them. But if they work with a provider like Cox Business, you're bringing in your expertise. You're just making it all run better for them and getting them up and running sooner, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we provide end user support on the back end too, which is pretty neat. So,
but yeah, that really I think hits the whole application performance thing. You're setting it up for their applications, and you're making sure that it runs over your preferred network. And I think so WAN transport modernization, we talked about moving away from those legacy connections, and a lot of them worked fine when you had simple applications, but we know these days applications are full of multimedia, and of course a lot of them are in the cloud. So you can connect any connection type, and that can also help if you've got remote locations where maybe you can't get that Metro Ethernet, so you go with a wireless connection of some type. I think you guys help with that, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, so we also have LTE solutions for backup and things like that. So yeah, absolutely.
Again, at home, we're seeing that where they might have a decent broadband link, but they want a backup, and so they use the LTE, and we can put little LTE module in, or you could even connect it up to your phone if you wanted to.
Yeah, it's a great solution.
And then, we talked about simplified operations, that's the central orchestrator. And I think you talked about how you provide access to the organization so they can see the benefits through the orchestrator, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think this one is kind of interesting. So this is definitely emerging when you think about edge compute and IoT. Well, IoT is emerged and it's continuing to, but edge compute is another one that I think, you know, while we're just starting to hit the cusp of it right now, that's going to be a big use case for SD-WAN moving forward. And we've got some things in the works there too, which is pretty exciting. So.
Yeah, I see that coming up, you know, and we're seeing some organizations look at how SD-WAN can help. And like I mentioned, we can segment traffic, make sure all those sensors out in the network aren't, or device traffic isn't overwhelming important application traffic. And it even has the potential to do some pre-processing of that kind of traffic, you know, on the edge device. Yeah. So I think, you know, to summarize for the part that I'm talking about is that we really are trying to enable this IT transformation, you know, by providing a more agile network, one that can be responsive, one that's easy to manage, and one that gives you the connectivity types that you know that you need. And as I mentioned, you know, being able to turn up branches more quickly, to have a more reliable branch. You know, we're seeing some organizations are putting digital services into the branch, and some of these are live types of services. And so they need to know that the network's going to stay up. You know, things aren't going to conk out on them as they build out infrastructure in the branch. This really has happened a lot in retail, where they put in digital dressing rooms, for example, or, you know, you go into the store and you buy things through an app on your phone, you know. So yeah, we enable all that kind of transformation, and then I think the really at the root of it all is, you know, once you've transformed your branch, you've got your WAN set up, you can just move forward with your business initiative to move to the cloud, you know, and move to our cloud hosted applications and services. So yeah, I'd say that's kind of the part I wanted to cover. I know you got a little bit more to talk about, Jared.
Yes, well, you brought up a great point there. So as well, so as you think about, you know, adding on incremental cloud solutions and whatnot, I feel, you know, this simplifying of your network makes that transformation that much easier. And I think that's it. It's IT transformation, right? It's being able to, you know, starting to start from the base, build your way up in a new model. And you mentioned it, right? It's not about forklifting everything that you've done so far. It's just about taking what you have, working a little bit smarter with it, and then over time, you know, having that renewed plan. So that's great stuff. So so one of the things, let me click forward here. One of the things I did want to do a little bit, and I don't know if I told you I was going to do this, but I did just want to brag on you guys a little bit, if you don't mind, Michael. You know, we talked about VMware being, you know, kind of the market leader. And I just, you know, one of the things that's really important to us at Cox Business is that we make sure that we choose the best of the best, right? And best in breed, Vello Cloud was best in breed, you know, VMware coming in, best in breed. And you know, I think when I think about what this means, you know, and this is again Gartner quadrant, you know, there's leaders and visionaries, and you're right on the top upper right of all that, right? You're leading from a perspective of, you know, the market, your ability to execute is unparalleled, and then, you know, being a visionary in the business and kind of leading from that perspective as well. So pretty cool stuff, and I hope you don't mind. I just wanted to announce.
No, appreciate it, and you know, it's great to be working on a market-leading product that's really delivering for our customers, and you know, to have partners like Cox Business that can set the thing up and run it for them. Yeah,
love it, love it. Well, I appreciate that. So you know, then it all comes together, right? And you know, I think when we look at this, it's like I mentioned, you know, there's a lot of providers, a lot of vendors creating SD-WAN boxes, a lot of providers out there offering the SD-WAN solution. But, you know, I kind of frame it up in this slide, right? Which is like, first off, it starts with the network. With multi-location capabilities, it's important, you know, to have a provider that uses a national diverse fiber footprint, has the LTE capabilities. And so that's kind of the core fundamental of this. The second piece is implementation, making sure that you've got some flexibility. And you know, with Cox Business, we can do self-install, which, you know, Michael mentioned earlier, is really simple to do, you know, especially for the edges. Or we can do a full professional installation for you. And that includes configuration and you know, quality assurance and everything that goes into that. But getting it, you know, installed and set up is just the beginning, right? What we really pride ourselves on is our ongoing support. You know, when you look at our rapid response support team, we get a 4.8 out of 5 customer satisfaction score. And the way we measure that is we actually ask every single end user even that comes and interfaces with our team to grade us and give us feedback, and we have incredible scores, but not even scores, just great stories about how, you know, we've helped people, you know, fix their networks and deal with some of the challenges over the last year. So again, some of the features of this is, again, we don't make you go into a fully managed scenario. We have co-management options for this product, full feature set. You know, the customer portal or our managed cloud portal, I'll say, is a unique one. And you mentioned it earlier, Michael. You know, we're one of the only providers under our single pane of glass who has actually taken on the APIs from Vello or VMware and actually integrated them with our portal. And that's really exciting, because what happens then is you're able to manage everything under one portal, including all your VMware activities, so or SD-WAN activities. So that's pretty cool. The other thing that's really unique about what we do is advanced circuit management and LAN side consulting. So in many ways, with many providers, you're going to be told, hey, you know, go to the other provider, go deal with them. We take that upon ourselves to look at, you know, what's happening on the network, how we can help, and make sure that, you know, the network is running, you know, well end to end, and not just leave, you know, our customers high and dry, which goes back to sort of that 4.8 out of 5 customer satisfaction score. So it's an end-to-end solution. It's a holistic solution, all bundled up by Cox Business. And then on the back end, it's really nice because it integrates perfectly with the rest of our cloud services, including desktop infrastructure, DR, security, backup, 365, and then for those of you on the call, we actually just launched what's called Managed Device as a Service, where we can provide the laptops, both Chromebooks and Office-based or Microsoft-based, and tablets for one low cost a month. So you can kind of get out of the whole managing these devices as well. So that's a pretty exciting product that we just launched. So I'll leave it at that. I think we'll go ahead and open it up for questions with the last 10 minutes or so here on the call, if that's okay. Summer, are you out there? Do we have any good questions?
I'm here, and yes, we do.
All right.
I'll just start reading them out to you guys. So, okay. Would an SD-WAN device be needed at the residence for home users to have the benefits that SD-WAN can provide?
Yeah, the answer is yes. We have a simple, you know, a smaller, less expensive SD-WAN device that's designed just for the home use, and it has the capability to have a LTE SIM put in it. In the future, there's a possibility for a software implementation for the laptop. That's something that we're looking at, but right now it would be this low cost, you know, SD-WAN device. And as I mentioned too, it's something that is an automated deployment. It's like your little home router as far as putting it in, right?
Great. Next up, can I prioritize application traffic and performance?
Yeah, yes. As I mentioned, it comes, the policies come pre-configured. We already understand your typical business applications, but they can be customized. And Jared, I think Cox can give access for that if that's part of the service, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so we can help with that too, to make sure that if there are unique scenarios that you need to have covered, we can absolutely help with that. That's part of the benefit, again, of having a provider that does understand the application layer. You know, candidly, a lot of providers don't deal with applications that often, and so having a provider that truly understands the the upper layers of the OSI stack, application layers, is really critical.
Well, yeah, I think that's important too, because it's more than just the connectivity. I mean, the connectivity is important, but it's the application performance at the end of the day that really matters, right? And you'd mentioned in your last slide too, tying into hosted applications and making sure that the SD-WAN is benefiting them, right?
Yeah.
Awesome, and they keep coming in. So how secure is the platform when employees are working from home?
Well, it has a built-in firewall, and also it has the capability to direct traffic to cloud-hosted security services. And it has the ability to segment home traffic from work traffic. So, Jared, that's something that you would incorporate as part of your service, right?
Yeah, so it's yeah, as far as the basic service, there are some basic firewall options, but yeah, I think for home users we limit some of those functionalities, but it depends. I mean, we absolutely can bring the full service scale into the home if it's needed. We do have, I mean, so for instance, I'll give you an example. If we have executives and whatnot, or IT leaders that need this access at their home, we can launch full scale there as well.
Awesome. Okay, this is a long one. So Michael and Jared, if you need to look in the Q&A panel, let me know. But when you are a remote office going through a network upgrade from on-prem to SDN, and the work is being done by engineers from the headquarters, how do you address technical debt and identify where to get started on eliminating that?
Well, typically there's a consultation process that happens where you sit down with the people running the network and the people running the applications and do an assessment of what's needed. Jared, I imagine that's part of your professional services practice, right?
Yeah, so exactly. I think, and if I'm understanding the question correctly, that's all part of the intake. So when we take on a new project, and as you can probably imagine, we've got some very, very, very complex scenarios that we work with. And so we always take a look at what's currently deployed, how it's deployed, what applications are running, and then we build a comprehensive plan around that. And sometimes, it's a simple implementation where it's like, hey, ship these devices out, plug them in, here you go. There's other times where it's like, hey, I want to put this in 1 or 2 locations first. I want to make sure that everything's working. Then we're going to scale, 1, 2 locations at a time. So we have other deployments that happen more like that. So again, every situation's a little different, but having a team who understands the network side and the application side is really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a key benefit, if they work with someone who's seen things before, right, and knows how to deal with them. And there are capabilities in the solution. We didn't get into them so much, but there are capabilities where if you have various networks within the organization, if you're using, private networks and public networks and the like, we have functionality in there to deal with these complex situations that may have been inherited.
Yeah, we see that sometimes to that point with M&A. When you bring on a new company and you've got two different networks, and they're trying to figure out how to bring these 2 networks together, and how to do it in a really smart way. it's a perfect time to do sort of this overhaul.
Awesome, you guys. Is there any sort of content filter option for K through 12 for K through 12?
The Sd-Wan solution has the capability to steer traffic to a cloud web firewall device. I don't know if you guys Cox are hosting that, but if you are, traffic can be sent through it, or a third party one, right?
Yeah, we do have content filtering solutions, and actually, especially on the K through 12 side. So one of the things with managed device as a service, and the computers that you can purchase and whatnot, we actually ship that. There's an option to have that BARC fully integrated, which is basically, I'm sure whoever asked the question is probably familiar with BARC, but basically it's a AI intelligence platform that basically can not only do content filtering, but also predictive analysis of conversations and things like that, so that if children are having or accessing content or having conversations that they shouldn't be, it's got a great system to kind of shut that down and alert administrators about those conversations and make sure that they can follow up with some actions. So yeah, I would say that while SD-WAN has some inherent features of it, it's kind of my last slide there talking about all the other things we do, security as a service and managed device, absolutely can package something up that would be able to do all content filtering and everything for a K through 12 type of scenario.
Yeah, that's a good point you made. You have the option of running a service in the virtualization environment right on the edge device in the home, or pointing the traffic to a cloud hosted service, right?
Yep.
Awesome, and we have about 3 minutes left, so I'll ask a couple more. Why use a provider versus me just buying the equipment on my own?
I think that's for you, Jared.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously you can go out there and purchase these devices on your own. What we find a lot of times is, in fact, we have scenarios like this where people go out, they purchase the device, they go to implement it, and they have trouble, right? And they go back to the manufacturer, and I'm not saying that VMware would ever say, it's your problem, go fix it, but generally speaking, it's much easier to go through a provider that has that expertise. What we've actually had happen was people buy the device, come back to us later and say, hey, look, we bought all these devices, but at the end of the day, we don't know how to manage them candidly, and we would really love it if you would consider, in addition to some of the other services we're buying, if you would consider managing some of these devices for us. And so in very unique scenarios, we can help with that, but generally speaking, and based on my experience, it's typically can be challenging. The one thing too, if you've got a full IT team that's well versed in deploying SD-WAN and in application delivery and all that stuff, it might make sense to do that, right? It might make sense to go buy the boxes and do it that way. But what we're seeing again is that, from just a strict management perspective of the day-to-day, it's very cost effective to just have somebody else deploy it, manage it, and then have everything sort of under one umbrella. I never like to say one throat to choke, because that's
Yeah.
I never want to get choked, but I think it can be very cost effective. People will find out versus going and buying it directly.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I mean, we do have larger, more sophisticated organizations who set it up themselves. It's a lot easier than switches and routers, but it still is networking, right? It's still an undertaking. And if you can deal with somebody who's done it before, who already has the basics set up, there's a big advantage there. And that those IT resources can work on a new project, for the company, instead of just running the network, right?
Yeah, and it eliminates some finger pointing too, because you end up with, like, was it the provider? Is it the box? Is it, the person administrating the box? Is it the application? So that helps as well.
Well, good. Yeah.
Are we at
Awesome.
time,
And
Summer? I think so.
yeah, we are.
All right, cool. Well, hey, look, so thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. We're going to be doing another CloudStream session in April on disaster recovery as a service, and so we're excited to talk about that. In the meantime, if you want to learn more, if there's questions we didn't answer, please get in touch with your Cox Business representative or visit us at coxbusiness.com/cloud. Love to engage with you there. Also, we've created a LinkedIn group. It's called Cloud Q&A. For Cox conversations about cloud, and you can go ahead and put questions in there and we'll answer them. We have a team of cloud pros that can help you with that as well. But in the meantime, Michael, thanks again for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, and look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Okay.